The opening day of the 44th FIL World Cup season, the Eberspeche Luge World Cup continues from Innsbruck, Austria, as we get ready for run number 1 of the doubles competition. Hi again, everyone. I'm Tim Singer. The air temperature at 36 degrees Fahrenheit, 2.1, as you see, with the ice temperature just below freezing, and from the looks of race number 1, the ice maintained perfect condition from start to finish. Now we get set for the doubles competition with the men's race already in the books, and this doubles course is a bit shorter at 888 meters, and we'll take a close look through our Schlitten camera, the POV camera as it were, in just a moment here, and it is a bit of a challenge for the women in doubles. It's a lower start considerably for the men, but right here, out of the outrun, that quick left turn, I guarantee you over the course of the next 2 days, through the doubles, the women's, not to mention the relay competition, there will be a few mishaps in that first portion. Great look at the carousel Kleisel curve as they exit and they make their way through curve 8, and then over to curve 9. This is a big one, and it's a tough exit. If you get through that, okay, the long straightaway to 10, you ride high off of curve 10, and the lower S curves, the labyrinth, where we saw 2 or 3 different sleds crash earlier today in the men's competition. Well, congratulations to Felix Loch of Germany, winning for the first time in 2 seasons. He captured the opening race earlier today, in a rare day where the men's singles started the World Cup weekend. That does not happen a lot. Now we get ready for doubles. 22 sleds all told in the field, and the first 13 all had to qualify through the Nations Cup qualifying on Friday. Then you have your seeded group, including the Italians. Park and Cho of Korea actually qualified as a seeded group in this weekend's opener, but all eyes will be on Stoy Kohler as they return to World Cup action, and the 2 Germans, Egert Benneken and Wendel Art. Those 3, along with possibly the brothers from Latvia, figure to be the medal contenders in this opening race. We'll sit back and get ready. Our first couple getting ready at the top from Ukraine, Yuri Pwai and Rostlavac Lekyevich. The Ukrainian team finished last year in 19th place in the World Cup standings. Their best result being a 12th in Winterberg. That was a shortened group of athletes, much smaller field, but they did have 2 top 15s earlier in the season in Lake Placid. So that was great to see on a normally challenging course. Well, they're having a little bit of an adventure trying to get through curve 9 all the way to curve 10. They have cleaned it up, but they've lost all sorts of speed as a result. Both of these athletes are just 21 years old. They're in their 3rd year on the World Cup, their 2nd full season, as they cross in a 41.186. As a point of comparison, that's about 1.7 seconds slower than the track record which was set by Tony and Sasha Egert Benneken back at the 2017 Worlds. Curve 9, for many years, was about the only tricky spot on this track. I recall covering a race here where the great George Hackl flipped his sled out of curve 9. The sled went rolling out of the track. He was okay. But now there are a lot of other new presented challenges for these athletes. There's that start curve aforementioned for doubles and ladies. There's the entrance into Kreisel. There is the lower S curves. Should be for some fun racing here. And we have 3 very young teams getting ready to go. First from Moldavia and then 2 from Romania. This is Siskanu and Oprea from Moldavia, the 2nd sled. So warm welcome if you are watching, tuning in from around the world. I understand from our EBU friends in Geneva, we have some 60 countries able to get the live streaming signal this year. That's exciting news. If you're listening in, if you have questions and you have comments, by all means, send them my way. You can reach me at Luge Announcer on Twitter, at Luge Announcer. And if you want to go the email route, you can find us luge.announcer@gmail.com. Your questions, your comments, your critiques, your insights. And full disclosure, I may not have all of the answers because I am commentating live to you from the state of Vermont in the northeastern U.S. Excited to be watching the live action and sharing it with you all the way over in Innsbruck, Austria. The sun shining at the finish with a 41.060 for this team from Moldavia, taking over the very early lead in this 22 sled field. This is a gorgeous area in the Tyrolean Alps. It's about a 2-hour drive to Munich, maybe another 2 hours if you go the other direction south to get to the Südtirol region of Italy, Mirensin and Brixen, where the Italian great doubles Olympic medal teams over the years all trained out of. In fact, I quote USA doubles athlete Jason Turdeman saying that I love that in luge we tend to start the season in Eagles, Austria. It's a beautiful setting. You're right outside of Innsbruck, so you can go down and enjoy a bit of the city atmosphere, but the track is on a gorgeous mountainside that looks across the valley over Innsbruck. For the location itself, I think that it's my favorite place to visit. That's Team USA's Jason Turdeman. Incidentally, the Americans, the Canadians, and the Chinese teams have all chosen to skip the first half of the World Cup season due to very understandable health considerations. We will talk a lot more about the protocols due to the COVID pandemic, but we're just happy to see action as the first of two in a row from Romania now hit the ice, Honderich and Alanae. We expect to see the Romanians tomorrow in the relay competition, although Valentin Cretu had a very tough race earlier today with a crash in men's singles. Tomorrow, Raluca Stramaturaro, the top 10 Olympian, will take to the course for the women's singles. The Romanians are through with a time of 40.317. Very, very respectable time. Less than a second off the track record. That's an eternity in the sport, but again, these first few sleds are just trying to get down cleanly and see how they do against their contemporaries, against the other young teams in the competition. A warm welcome to some of the viewers that are just tuning in and watching and commenting on Twitter. One Romanian, Adrian, is watching from Romania. And a big shout out to our good friend Uda from Dresden, who runs such a top-notch media facility at the Altenburg race. She'll be busy next week, but Uda, thanks for tuning in. Sorry to miss you this season. Okay, we move on with the second of the two Romanians, Turea and Matska. Mircea Turea on the top, just 19 years old, the younger brother of Theodore, who we saw earlier. And a correction, Mircea is just 17 years old. So he's not only the youngest racer in today's race, he's the youngest racer in the World Cup this season. That's amazing. He can still be in the under-23 World Championship race in the year 2025. And they're looking good. They've moved from the green to the red. We'll see if they can hang on to a top two position here in the very early going. Still ahead, the Latvians, the Russians, the Germans, the Austrians. A lot of new teams still to come. Right now, second place, there's Theodore, who raced earlier today. 40.468 in second place. So the first four have come down, all Eastern European nations. And it's Romania, the top two, on the leaderboard. Incidentally, not only can you stream the video, but if you want to stay on top of all of the results as they're happening, you can follow the Swiss timing ticker, which can be accessed from the fil-luge.org website. No spectators here, nowhere to get food, but still the coaches and the athletes are on hand, and that's all that matters. That's all you need to run a world-class competition. From the Czech Republic, in their third year on the World Cup, Filip Videjek and Zdeněk Pekný. Pekný, the bottom man, just 19 years old. They've been competing together. This is actually their third season, and they had a couple of decent years. They were in 16th in the overall in the 2019 World Cup. They fell back to 21st last season. Their best result was a 13th place in Winterberg. They also had top 20s in Lillehammer and Sigulda. Every race this season will be held in either this one in Austria, one in Latvia, the rest in Germany, unless they add one to the calendar. They moved the canceled North American races to Europe, to Germany, Oberhof and Koenigsee. They just recently canceled the Beijing race, so it'd be nice to see if that one gets added somewhere else some other time later in the season. 40.466 for the Czech Republic. Second place right now between the two Romanians. Also later this year, not only is this the 44th season on the World Cup Tour, but the World Championships slated for the end of January in Berchtesgaden will be the 50th FIL Weltmeisterschaften. So that's a banner year. It's a key year for the sport of luge. To go back 56 years to find luge entering the Olympic Games, the 1964 Olympics were the first that had luge, and it was right here in Innsbruck on a slightly different track, the older track on the mountainside in Eagles. Tomáš Vaverčák and Maciej Šmiš from Slovakia. 23rd in last year's World Cup, 21st the season before. And last year they had a best showing of 7th place, actually. Very good 7th place finish, a top 10, their first ever in Winterberg. You may recall several nations did not compete in Winterberg last year due to a dispute with the track conditions. But still, 7th in any situation is great for these Slovakians. And they had a 14th the following week with a full field in Koenigsee. Still in the green, up the ramp to the finish, 40.188. First place right now for Slovakia. Look for them in tomorrow's relay competition, which will be fun. In fact, there is a possibility that some of these early sleds could make it into the sprint race. Only the top 15 get to qualify for Sunday's sprint format. There are 14 seeded, so at least one of the qualifiers will get into the sprint, and possibly more, depending what happens later on in this race. Now we have a brand new team from Germany making their World Cup debut. Hannes Olamunda and Paula Kubitz. They come from Thuringia. They replace the team from Winterberg, Goika Gam. Robin and David actually finished ahead of this pair last weekend in the German National Championships. As I'm not on location, I really didn't get any chance to talk with Norbert Locke about the decision to bring the young athletes here. But I know that Robin and David have had some struggles over the last couple of seasons, so it might be a good opportunity to see what these two youngsters can do here in their World Cup debut. There's no pressure on them. They don't expect to win the podium positions as the other two German sleds may do today. They are six-time medalists at the Junior World Championships, including gold at the Youth Olympic Games in 2016. Well into the green, 1/10 of a second up at the latest split. Speed trap coming up in a second, 67.6, by far the best speed. And 39.98 is their finish time. That's incredible. That's well out in front of everyone else. So they do what German doubles teams do best. They find their way to the top of the leaderboard in their World Cup debut performance. You know, Coach Locke, Coach Jan Eichhorn, they've been great about, especially over the last couple of years, about bringing young athletes in. Even young athletes that may not necessarily be in that customary German top 5 position, because the only way you're going to learn these tracks is by going to the World Cup events and competing on them against the best. Okay, here's another first-time young team, this one from Austria. I don't know a lot about Gott and Schulpf, but I do know that they're both 19 years old, and that Austria brings a great doubles tradition into the sport of World Cup luge. Not only Stoy Kohler, who we'll see in a little bit, but lest we forget the Linger brothers, two-time Olympic gold medalists. The Schiegel cousins, who won several world championship titles. Hens and Fischler, Olympic medalists in 2018, all now retired, many of them still working as coaches for the Austrians. So you know that these doubles young teams will be brought along from only the best. Still, it's going to be a hard task to do faster than the Germans at this point. To the finish, 67 miles an hour, 40.113, and that, you got to believe that's the best that Renny Friedel could hope for right now for Gott and Schulpf of Austria. Okay, on we go now with our 7th sled, or rather our 9th sled. Just moving along so quickly, having so fun at 6 in the morning here in the USA, almost 7. It's Markus Prock. He's the sport director of this Austrian program. He's no stranger to Olympic medals and World Cup overalls. We have 2 Russian teams in today's event, actually 3. And keep in mind, there are several Russian medal contenders in this sport. This is Yushakov and Prokhorov. They've both been at it for a while. Yushakov, the top man, Vladislav, is 35 years old, and Yuri Prokhorov is 29. They paired up together as a team just a few years ago. I should add that Denisov and Antonov, the Olympic medalists in the team relay from the 2014 games, they did not come to the Eagles because that pair tested positive for the COVID virus. Now, on the bright side, they stayed home. They're doing fine. All 120 athletes that did come to Innsbruck this week tested negative. So that's great news. They will be testing everyone, athletes and coaches, at every stop along the way. That, of course, is necessary. So Yushakov and Prokhorov, last year they were 8th in the World Cup standings. The year before they were 5th. They will be trailing the Germans by just a 1/10 of a second. In fact, exactly a 1/10 of a second. Last year, their best result was a third, one podium. That was in Lillehammer, but they did finish fourth in this World Cup opening race in Innsbruck. They may not see that this season. Incredible how deep Russia is in all three disciplines. More than any other nation, probably. Men, women, and doubles. Austria's got the strong men's program and the comeback doubles team. Germany has the comeback women, so they may be factors in all three disciplines this year. Not as much in the last couple of seasons. But Russia has had probably more different podium finishers than any other nation in terms of different athletes and sleds. And here is another Russian team, Kashkin and Korshunov. This is the youngest of all of the Russians. Both of these athletes, 22 years old. Savola Kashkin, the top man, is from Mytishi, Russia, and Konstantin Korshunov from Dimitrov. Last year on their home course in the World Championships, their best ever result. It was a fourth place finish. They had two podiums in the World Cup, but you gotta believe that that fourth on their home track, the biggest event of the year, had to outshine all of the other results. Looking good, but it's close. At 67.3 miles per hour, they're still in the green. Can they hang on? Yes, they do. By 700s, 39.905. Russia out in front. Germany second. And another Russian sled in third. That's the top three right now as we make our way to the final three qualifiers from yesterday's Nations Cup coming up next.
Next on start, starting number 11, Latvia, Martin Spots, Robert Blume.
Well, we have our first Latvian sled getting ready at the top now. Also a young team. I believe this is their first ever World Cup race. They finished third yesterday in the Nations Cup. Martin Spots and Roberts Pluma. A rare Latvian whose name does not end in S. Roberts Pluma. And speaking of Latvians, our congratulations to Ainars Fogelis from Latvia, long time involved in the Latvian national team and the Olympic team in Latvia. Just last week named the third president of the International Luge Federation. Ainars replaces Sepp Fendt, who was president for 26 years. Also at last week's Congress, American Dwight Bell was elected as general secretary of the federation, and Ireland was accepted into the FIL as the newest national member into the sport of luge. Latvians looking very good, 900s up, 67.5 miles an hour. Can they keep it in the green and stay ahead of much more senior Russians? They do. Wow, a great job. You can tell Martins Rubenis is pleased down there at the bottom. Bots and Pluma into the lead with a 39.796. Track record may fall today, folks. We're about 0.3 of a second off of the track record. In my mind, on a normal day, Egert Benekin, Stoy Kohler, these are teams that could be 0.3 of a second better than these Latvians. We will see, because we have two very strong sleds coming up now. We have both from Austria. Both of the Austrian double sleds had to qualify yesterday in the Nations Cup, but the reason for that was pretty simple. This team, Mueller and Frauscher, did not show up for the last, or one of the last events, so they didn't get those seeded points. And they also had a DNF. I believe it was a crash in the final race in Koenigsegg. So they were relegated back to qualifying, and then coming up next, everyone is eager to see what Stoy and Kohler have to do. We'll get to them in a minute, but now Yannick Mueller, Armin Frauscher. Frauscher, the bottom man, a former singles competitor and a former medalist here at a World Cup in Eagles in his rookie season as a singles competitor back in 2016. Last year they finished in 16th place overall in the World Cup. Just one top 10, or two of them rather, both 9th place finishes in Altenburg and in the sprint event in Sigulda. They certainly have had as many runs as anyone down this track over the past 6 weeks leading up to the opening of the season. Let's see if that red can turn to green. It's just 1,000th of a second right now, and it does turn green. Speed of 67 miles an hour. That's really not one of the fastest speeds, but it does translate to the fastest time. 39.785, Austria out in front with another formidable Austrian team getting ready to go at the top. Well done by Yannick and Armin. Earlier today, Germany took the top spot in the men's competition. So Austria would like to maybe have something to say about that today in doubles. Certainly, men's and doubles are Austria's two strongest disciplines. All right, it's great to see the next pair back on the World Cup this season, Thomas Stoy and Lorenz Kohler. As the coaches look to the top, Stoy and Kohler had a very forgettable year last year. They opened up as arguably the strongest team in the world. They finished third in the two races here. They backed those up with top sevens in each of the first 7 races, no worse than 7th, including 3 or 4 podiums and a victory in Altenburg. And then Thomas Stoy broke his leg, and they spent the rest of the season not competing, mending the leg. Now we get a chance to see if they are back and all the way back. Stoy from Bludenz in far western Austria, where the track was just completed and will host competitions this year. And Lorenz Kohler from right here in Innsbruck. Fourth place finishers at the Olympic Games. They are well out in front now at the latest split and opening it up, extending it. Yes, 39.615. That is a time that could stand for a while. I gotta believe they will hang on at least for the next 5 sleds. But who knows? That could be a first place time at the end of this run. As I always say, it's those teams that do well in the Nations Cup that will do well, top 5, top 6, in the main World Cup race. By far the best non-German doubles tandem in the last several seasons. Stoy and Kohler, great to see them back from injury. The Koreans made a late decision to join the World Cup. That was touch and go for a while. We were not sure if they'd be making it over, but they did. So great to see them. Great to see them qualify. In fact, in the case of Park and Cho, they did not even have to qualify. They were part of the seeded group. They finished 17th last year in the World Cup, including a by far best ever 4th place finish in the Winterberg race. Then they did not even race in Königssee. If they had, they would have been seated even higher. Really good form as they make their way now out of curve 9. A little bit of a skid. They figure not to stay close with the Austrians, and they are falling further and further back, now 0.6 of a second back, so this could end up being like a 7th place, 8th place finish at best. 12th, so disappointing. I was a little buried in some of the stats, so I didn't quite catch any major problems that may have happened. And Adrian has just texted in with his predictions while we're watching the replay of the Koreans. Thanks for joining us, Adrian. Not sure where you're watching from. If you do tweet in or email, let us know where you're watching from. But Adrian is saying Egert Bennigan for the win, Wendell Alt second, Stoy Kohler third. And you're not going out on a huge limb with that prediction, Adrian, because those are the three best teams in doubles luge over the past several years. But who knows in the opening race? You never know what teams have really improved over the summer. Thanks so much for writing with your predictions. Anyone else have a prediction? The sooner, the better. And here is the first Italian team. Rieder Rassner, Ludwig Rieder, Patrick Rassner. Ludwig, the top man who's been at it for many, many years now. He's been competing in the World Cup for over a decade. He was planning to get married this past spring. Unfortunately, COVID had something to say about that, so the wedding was postponed. The two of them have been together for 10 years, as I mentioned. They finished as high as 7th in the World, or as 5th in the World Cup overall back in 2014. And they had their lowest ever finish actually last season, a 12th place in the World Cup overall standings. The best results were a pair of 8th place finishes to end the season. They cross the finish line here at 67.5 miles per hour at their fastest point. Armin seems to be a little perplexed there as they're back. What position? That puts them in 5th spot. Yeah. That's a little tough because all things considered, this is their home track here in the Südtyrolean region. Sun continues to shine as the day moves along in Innsbruck, Austria. This is the opening World Cup race of the season. I'm Tim Singer, remotely calling the action live as we begin the first of at least 8 World Cup races, along with the World Championships in Koenigsegg, Germany. Now the second consecutive from Italy. Emanuel Rieder, Simon Keinswaldner. Rieder on top, Keinswaldner on the bottom. Different athletes have different functions in doubles. Both are responsible for a bit of the steering. Although, to be fair, it's the top man doing a vast majority of it. The bottom man still needs to be in touch with what's happening with the curves, with the body lean, with the movements. Both paddle, as you see. Keinswaldner, a former singles competitor. In fact, both of these were singles competitors. Rieder up until a couple of years ago, I believe. Yeah, he competed singles right up through the 2018 season. All right, they're keeping it close with Stoy and Kohler at back 0.7 at the last split. 67.9 is decent speed, so it's a second place time of 39.704 for Italians Rieder and Keinswaldner. They were the 16th sled down out of 22, so if you can do math, you know we have 6 remaining, including 2 more German sleds and the Latvians. Also 1 more from Italy still to come. Out of the tunnel and into the finish area. It's an impressive facility down here. This was all rebuilt about 20 years ago. It used to be just a little wooden hut. You used to come to an end on the luge run by hitting a big pad. That's what stopped you. But now they've got the long tunnel. Got a big building for timing and for technical checks. Not too far away is a very impressive restaurant lounge area just next to the outrun. Great to see sliding out of the seated group this pair of Ukrainians, Shtakiv and Lisetsky. Igor Stakiev, the top man, is 21 years old, and Lisetsky is 22. They're both from Kiev. Last year they were 18th in the World Cup, and they had top 15s in each of the last 3 races, which is why they are in the seeded group here. Well into the red, nearly a half-second back now. We don't believe the track is slowing down too much. This just is a team that did not expect to be in the top 7 or 8. But we'll know more in just a moment, because the Germans are getting ready at the top, and they will quickly indicate whether this is track or whether these are athletes dictating the times. We certainly hope it's athletes. Stoy and Kohler of Austria leading, Italy in second, another Austrian pair is in third, and we have 5 teams remaining. Okay, Tony and Sasha up at the top, Egert and Beneken. All they've done is capture the World Cup overall title the last 5 seasons. 5-time World Cup overall champions. And here's a little fun statistic to keep your mind on over the next hour or so. Wendel and Alt of Germany are the all-time winners in World Cup victories with 44. By my math, Egert and Beneken have 43. And 1 additional World Cup overall title, 5-4 they lead. But with a victory here, they would tie their teammates for the most ever wins. Tony Egert, Sasha Beneken, the defending world champions, on course right now. Tony was a positive COVID test, was reported to me over the summer, but recovered quickly. And he must have, because I saw a lot of great shots of Tony flying his airplane in and around Europe. This team linked up a couple of weeks before the Vancouver Olympic Games. They did not qualify for those Olympics, but they were 8th in Sochi. They took the bronze medal in Pyeongchang, world champions, and they are back 2 positions behind Stoy and Kohler. To take another close look at that, because that has got to be a bit of a surprise. And again, I didn't notice any mistakes, but I'm not that great at noticing the mistakes as the athletes are from top to bottom on this course. This was their start, and their start time was only the 8th fastest, so that impacted things. You know, last year they came to Innsbruck having had Tony break his leg a few weeks before the season began. Didn't matter. They still won the competition. They won 4 races last year, all told, on their way to the World Cup overall. But 3rd place right now for Egert Beneken of Germany. That puts a little damper in Adrian's online prediction, but we'll see if they can catch up in run number 2. They trail Austria and Italy. 4 sleds remain, 2 of them from Latvia, 1 from Italy and 1 from Germany. Oskar Gudramovic and Peteris Collins. Start time 11th fastest at 2.095. A pair of 32-year-old athletes from Riga, the capital city, 1-hour drive from the track in Sigulda. 3-time Olympians. Their best Olympic results, 10th in 2014 Sochi. We saw a young Latvian team earlier that's still in the top 5. We still have the Sheiks brothers coming up. Putins and Marcinkiewicz not here to open the World Cup season. I'm not sure if they'll be joining later. 10th place right now for Gudramovic and Kalmans, which means that Putins and Marcinkiewicz we could see them as early as next week, maybe, in the battle for positions on the World Cup for Latvia. How is this track doing? I would love if someone is watching live right now from somewhere at or near the track, if you have a report on the conditions. It'd be good to know how it's holding up. A lot of sleds, 64 earlier today in the men's competition, not including forerunners. So we're closing in on about 85 sleds down this track so far on this day. Third of the three Italians now. Italy still in second place with Rieder and Keinswaldner. And waiting at the top, Ivan Nagla and Fabian Malaya. Nagler, the top man, 21 years old, and Malaya, 22. Surprise qualifiers for the 2018 Olympic Games. They were both teenagers. They had such a great pre-Olympic season, and as a result, they made that team, and they finished in 7th place in Pyeongchang. Now, they've been hard-pressed to meet that success the last couple of years, but they've had injuries. They've also had to deal with some outside sport events such as military duty, school. Get all of that out of the way before you concentrate full-time on luge. 1500s behind Stoy and Kohler at this point. Starting to look more and more like the Austrians could hang on to their spot after winning yesterday's Nations Cup. 6th place right now for Nagler and Malaya. And Armin Zugler should not be that surprised, because that has been the trend over the last 3 or 4 sleds. No one seems to be challenging the top two. Just the first race of the season as they battle for the Yoska Crystal, which will be awarded to the overall points winner on the long-form World Cup races as well as the sprints. And then there'll be a second piece of crystal at the end of the year that's presented to the winner of the just the World Cup, just these races, the full field World Cups, without factoring in the sprint points. 2 sleds now left to go in the first run, Innsbruck, Austria. And next, the only athletes still in the sport whose Olympic career goes all the way back to Torino 2006. Andres and Joris Šiks from Latvia. Andres, 35 years old, Joris, 37. 4-time Olympians. They placed 7th in Torino. They placed 6th in Pyeongchang, but in between they were on the podium in both Vancouver and Sochi. The most decorated Latvian lugers of all time on course now. In fact, their best season may have been last year. They've never won a World Cup overall, but they were 3rd in the points last year. They had their first 2 ever World Cup victories. They're always consistent, rarely on the top of the podium until last season. A little shaky on that exit of 9. They managed to stay off the far wall, but they're bleeding time, 1/10 of a second. Again, this is starting to look a little like Eagles last season. And they had a lot of trouble down there at the bottom. Under that shade, didn't quite catch it. Inars Kivlenieks down there at the bottom must be coaching this year, because I did not see Inars in qualifying or in the World Cup. And wow, disappointing for these Latvians who placed just ahead of their teammates Kudramovic and Kalnins. Latvia right now in 5th, 10th, and 12th place, with the 5th place being the young team of Vats and Pluma. Yeah, they had trouble way down here at the bottom. The final curve before the uphill finish. And Inars, yeah, he can just shake his head. One team remaining, 4-time Olympic medalists. Actually, 4-time Olympic gold medalists. The Tobys from Bavaria. Wendel and Alt last year were in 2nd in the World Cup overall points. That's been a familiar place for them behind Egert Bennigan, at least in the World Cup over the last few seasons. But the Tobies, of course, have the Olympic gold medals to show for it. And they had a lot of great results last year. They were second, but they were only a distant second. And they were never lower than 7th place all season long. And were on the podium 7 different times. So the Tobies still going strong. Ooh, they had a little bit of a venture there on the start ramp as they nearly paddled it into the right wall. Their start time was only 13th fastest. As we look to see if there's going to be a Bavarian resurgence this year. Felix Locke won the men's race earlier today. Natalie Geisenberger is back for the women tomorrow. Let's see what the Tobies can do here. Speed coming up. At the fastest point, 67.9. They cross the finish line back in 6th place. I gotta believe this track slowed down a little bit for the last 5 or 6 sleds. So Stoy and Kohler did have the advantage of going earlier, but they were also by far the best looking from top to bottom in this run number 1 at Eagles. The Tobies with 4 Olympic gold medals in doubles and in team relay, 2 in Sochi, 2 in Pyeongchang. Well, it is looking as if neither German team will extend their career-leading overall World Cup victories. Toby, Vendel, and Alt with 44, Egert Bennigan with 43, but currently they sit in 3rd and 6th position. Let's check out those standings. And Stoy and Kohler are leading the way. They finished 3rd last year. They had a victory in Altenburg. They also won on this track 2 seasons ago. So back where they belong and back from injury. Reeder Keinswaldner could be looking at their best ever finish if they can hold that podium spot. Mueller and Frauscher also looking pretty solid in 4th place. The Latvians a bit of a disappointment with the brothers in 11th place. And a look at all of the 22 finishers here